Dorigold, the idea of going even beyond Hamas to Hezbollah and Iran?
Well, I think the main problem we face in the Middle East is Iran. Iran is a country which is projecting its involvement all across the region, not just in Lebanon, where Iranian officers are now in the chain of command of Hezbollah, but also Hamas. Hamas is today a satellite of Iran, which is, of course, why Egypt is very concerned with what is going on in the Gaza Strip and not just Israel. I'm actually very surprised that our friend from Bahrain does not recognize the magnitude of the Iranian threat. The spokesman for Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that Bahrain should be a province of Iran. And I heard a Palestinian spokesman mention that Arab land is not occupied by Iran. Well, go tell that to Abu Dhabi and Dubai about the islands in the Gulf.
Dorigold,
the Iranian presence in Iraq is massive.
Dorigold,
so I think right now we are dealing with a region which is very different from the region that we knew back in 1991 or in 1993.
Are you saying it's inconceivable?
I think both Israel.
Are you saying it's inconceivable that Iran could ever or should ever be brought into these negotiations to facilitate them, to broaden them? That's what the point was from the floor.
Yes, well, that sounds, again, like a very progressive and very welcoming idea. But in reality, who is the Iranian leadership today that is making territorial demands on the Arab world? You know, it is the Iranian leadership under Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad who speak about wiping Israel off the map or wiping Israel off the pages of history. So it's like a negotiation with Hamas. What are you going to talk about? You know, when the Iranians make these statements about wiping Israel off the map, let me finish my sentence. They put these sentences on billboards, which they attach to a Shihab 3 missile that can strike Tel Aviv. So what are we going to talk about? The size of the missile that they'll attack with? Let's be realistic. Let's build peace between Israelis and Arabs and ignore those who want to destroy peace and destroy us.
Well, Mr. Obama, when he came to Cairo, he extended his hand to speak to the Iranians. I mean, this is the President of the United States extending his hand to speak to the Iranians. Everything is on the table, and he said it. I mean, my English is not that good, but I think I heard that. Everything is on the table for discussion. So if this is the President of the United States, who's supposed to be moderating now between the two parties, the Arabs and the Israelis, and he says that, so who am I to say that's a bad thing to do?
Let's get a sense of the next generation. Let's go to Yara Al-Wazir from Palestine. You're 17. You're one of the change makers. What's your view about this kind of discussion when it affects your future?
Well, I think we have to recognize that although people are talking, in fact, the mediators of the negotiations, who are meant to be neutral, are not in fact neutral, and they are very biased. And therefore, a peace deal cannot be reached if the negotiators themselves are biased.
And what do your emotions say about this issue at the moment?
Well, in the future, I really do hope that a peace deal can be reached, because I would love to go back to my country. I would love to have the option of visiting my country.
What is your reaction when you hear that, Dorigold, this reaction and this hope? Do you believe that it's well-founded?
You're asking me whether the hope of peace is well-founded?
When we hear from a young Palestinian like that.
I believe, as I said in my opening remarks, that we can overcome our differences, but it requires a compromise by the Palestinians and a compromise by Israel. It can't be made by people coming into the room saying, I will only accept all of my demands or I have achieved nothing. I believe the possibility of compromise exists. There is compromise in a number of these subjects, but it's going to take persistence and hard work. I don't think the issue is the problem of the intermediaries, the diplomats from the West. The best peace that we can reach is a peace that we reach between each other.
We hear a lot of talk about peace. We want peace, peace, peace. But in reality, things are really different, Nick.
What do you mean by that?
I mean by that for the last 20 years, while we have been discussing the end of Israel's occupation, we have been discussing the dismantling of all illegal settlements. They have tripled. What I mean by that we have been experiencing a game of deceit, A game of deceit that only a negotiated settlement would deliver the two-state solution, and in the end what we get is more settlements. A game of deceit when we negotiate on the table dignity, freedom, and the end of occupation, and under the table occupation is being deepened and strengthened. This is a game of deceit, and I believe the Palestinians have got to the absolute point of no return, that this game is over. We are no longer interested in such a game. The path ahead of us is very clear-cut.
Karim Sachapur, you asked about whether this can be reconciled. You likened it to inviting vegetarians to a barbecue when it comes to the kind of radical thinking that's needed. Can you see a new way of doing it? Do you believe the right people are talking or not?
Well, let me go back to an assertion raised by Dori Gold that Iran is the primary threat to Israel. It's the primary threat to stability in the region. And what we've seen empirically is that Iran's ideology, its soft power, resonates the loudest when people feel most angry and outraged and alienated in the region, specifically the 2006 Lebanon war when Israel was bombing Lebanon, and more recently the 2009 Gaza war. So if indeed Iran is the chief threat to Israel, which I don't deny that's the Israeli belief, the best way to drain the swamp, if you will, and weaken Iran's soft power is in fact by making forward progress on the peace process with the Palestinians. So I think that is something that Israel hasn't really made a true effort to do, it seems.
Let me pick up on this issue of, has Israel made sacrifices for peace? For example, in the Gaza Strip, Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza. And our expectation was that if we pull out our army, if we pull out 9,000 settlers, the situation should get quieter. It should stabilize. And of course, what happened? The number of rocket attacks, if you compare 2005 to 2006, you find a 500% increase in rocket attacks. You suddenly find, and this is important for those who don't believe Iran is a problem, that Hamas leaves the Gaza Strip, the members of Hamas, the operatives, through the tunnels under Rafiah, fly to Tehran, where they're trained by the Revolutionary Guards, who also supply the Grad rockets that hit Ashkelon, Ashdod, Beersheba. Therefore, Iran is very much a part of this conflict, but it is a factor which is making the conflict worse. Only by pulling Iran away from this conflict can perhaps we begin to bridge differences in these sensitive areas of security. One thing the Israeli government is asking, and it is repeatedly saying to its friends, we cannot allow the West Bank situation to replicate what happened in Gaza, where we pulled out completely and all we got was a 500% increase in rocket fire.
Hussam Zomlot,
Yes,
the view from Fatah.
Yes, I'm glad he's mentioning Gaza, another very full-fledged example of what is happening. You pulled out of Gaza, Dori. You did not even coordinate with the Palestinian Authority. Mr. Dahalan was there in Gaza. He was able, and our colleagues were able to talk over. You left it absolutely empty. You planned what happened. Gaza has been put under siege since 1991. The disconnect is not Palestinian. It's physically an Israeli. You have prepared for the current situation, and now we sit and say, look at Gaza. It's far away. It's disconnected. There is disunity. We cannot talk to them. Before Iran, Mr. Gold, you spoke about Iraq. Iraq was the biggest threat. Iraq is standing between us and peace. Then we took off Iraq off the map. Now we talk about Iran. No. All before that, you were talking about the lack of Palestinian leadership. Can you do that now? Can you talk of Abu Mazen, who is not a man of peace? Before that, you were talking about security. Can you claim that the security in the West Bank now is the best that Israel has witnessed in its history so far? You talk about economic and institutional capability, that the Palestinians are unable to govern themselves. Go and read the World Bank report 3 weeks ago saying that the Palestinians are absolutely ready, not only to govern themselves, but to be one of the most vivid states in the region. All these are excuses. These are pretexts because you are not ready to proceed on the path that we all know what it is. You are not ready to pull out of the occupied territories, period.
Right, let me go. Yasmin Mohamed Galal.
I want to say something. I wanted to go a step back. I think we need to ask ourselves why the Palestinians have voted for Hamas and why the Israelis have voted for Likud. I think this is because there's a lot of fear and stereotypes about both sides in both regions. I'm hopeful that next time when the Palestinians and the Israelis get to know each other, the Palestinians who really want to make peace and the Israelis that really want to make peace, spread awareness, get to know each other. Next elections, we are not electing this kind of people, again, extremists. And what I see from here, people accusing each other. And if these are the people negotiating, then we do have a problem.
The gentleman there.
Unfortunately, we don't have alternatives. People in the Arab world are always restricted. I want to ask one question for the politicians in Palestine and the Arab world. Why do not the politicians in the Arab world and Palestine be brave and say, we are in a deadlock. We cannot make anything for the peace process. We are in a failure. Say one thing. We are losers.
Khaled Janahi, is that the kind of view that you were representing when you talked about the hundreds of millions on the street, as you put it, at every level of social strata?
Well, I'm not a politician, but that's only one.
Your business, though.
Yeah, but that's
would you like to step in and start negotiating?
Yeah, but that's only
that. Politicians?
Well, no, I'll be a dead duck. But no, I think coming to a point, I think who's talking and who should be talking is very, very important.
But does that represent a very critical view or not?
That's the frustration. That's the emotional aspect of the frustration, which is down, and that's what I was saying at the beginning. That is what we got to work. That's the time bomb. This is the mother of all problems. That's the time bomb that we have to be aware of in 10, 20 years down the road. Things the way that things are going today. I think the young lady, Palestinian young lady, when she raised, I would hope to go back, he said, the people who are basically moderating the peace, because you have peace between two parties. And reality check is the following. You have a weak party and you have a strong party. And the problem is the moderator today, whether we like it or not, actually, whatever the strong party does, wants, they are with them. They are not on the other side. They've proved that to be the point. I mean, that's a fault within us and the Arabs. I mean, when I have the Congress corridors of the United States, where the decision-taking happens, the Israelis have basically over 150 lobbyists. The 22 Arab countries, they have 6 lobbyists. That's all. I mean, that's an issue. In Brussels, they have over 160 lobbyists. I think we don't have except more than a dozen lobbyists. These are important issues that, bottom up, we have to think about it from the Arab street perspective to push it through. Because that, at the end of the day, for me, the more important thing is people. I mean, we all have to live. It's the humanity aspect. I mean, we bash each other. When we talk about sacrifices, we talk on the other side, compromises. I mean, the more land you take and the more powerful you are, then the compromise on the other side becomes much more difficult. So you're getting to the point, which I think I'm a good accountant. I think at the end of the day, is it a viable two-state solution or not, the way things are going today, with all what is expected from a perspective of compromise.
That accusation that really you're not admitting that everything is deadlocked, is that your view? Is that your perception and analysis at the moment, that everything is deadlocked or not?
Perhaps if that is the analysis, then leaders would have to resign or do something else.
What is the analysis?
The role of the leaders is to pursue every door possible.
What is the analysis
The analysis is the current situation as it stands with the current Israeli government. We have absolutely no way to believe that we are about to witness a breakthrough.
Is it deadlocked?
As far as the current Israeli government, it's a big deadlock. It's the biggest deadlock we have witnessed. This is a government that is interested in its own survival at the expense of the survival of their own people, at the future of their own people.
Right. Dori Gold, again, you heard that view from Egypt, particularly this suspicion that politicians on all sides simply cannot cope with what he described as deadlock.
No, I think the deadlock can be overcome. You know, you also have to take into account that Israel and the Palestinians have negotiated before. I know much of the global focus lately has been on the issue of settlements. But you know something? While Mr. Olmert was negotiating with Abu Mazen, with Mahmoud Abbas, Israel was building in its communities in the West Bank, and the Palestinians were building in their communities in the West Bank. We have a territorial dispute where we pour concrete or they pour concrete is not going to determine the borders. We had settlements in the Gaza Strip. We pulled out 9,000 people. So I would hope that people would stop using this issue to say that negotiations are hopeless. You know, I could also come up with demands of the Palestinian side. Why don't they close the Jenin refugee camp and move everybody out into nice housing? Well, Abu Mazen is not going to do that. He can't do that. That will undermine his internal position because of the sensitivity of that issue. We understand that. I think good negotiation means you don't undermine the status of the other side, of its leadership. You don't try and weaken them, you try and strengthen them. We're always seeking to do that.